Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Christine is having techie issues trying to get logged in.
Right, thank you. Councillor Neil Ingram.
Yeah, thanks, Christine.
Councillor Claire Maitland. Here. Councillor Linda Mabin.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Here.
Dr David Lewis.
Here.
Reverend Harriet Johnston.
Here, thanks.
Bab Smowitt.
I'm here.
Hazel Malacotti.
Yes, thanks, Christine.
And Jackie Livingston.
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks, Chair. Oh, Councillor Douglas is now joined.
I'm here as well, John McFadden.
Hi, John. Good to hear from you. And Barry, can you hear us okay?
I can, so thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks. Okay, now we go to item 1, which is declaration of interest. I'm not aware of anything significant. If you have any, please declare it. Okay, and then go to item 2, East Ayrshire Performance Summary Report, and Joe will lead us on that.
Morning, members. The report before you today is the penultimate report of this financial year. It's a report that builds on the information that I shared in terms of the revenue budget in political groups, and more recently provided far more detail in the report that was presented as the recovery plan to Cabinet 2 weeks ago. So the report before you had been trailed before, and so with that in mind, I tend to change the focus slightly. You know that we started at Q1 with a potential for a £20 million overspend, but that recovery plan that you approved 2 weeks ago saw that shift dramatically. It shows that in terms of the recovery, we have 3 recovery plans in play. They total around £10 million, and it's those recovery plans that we focus on, as I focus on going forward. They're important documents that will bring budgets back into line. And with those recovery plans in place, we have an education service, as you know, projected to end the year around £2.2 million overspent. But as I said in previous meetings, members, that will reduce further as we get towards March. You can see at paragraph 11 some of the challenges within that budget around teacher absence cover and also in probationer costs. I'm pleased to say that in taking that forward in the recovery plan meeting around the review of devolved school management took place with education colleagues in my team yesterday. More meetings are planned, and so you can see straight away, members, not only is the service trying to recover the budget, but actively seeking to progress the recovery plan that is within it. Paragraph 13 picks up on ASN transport. You know that was the first item on the recovery plan. It had no figure against it, but it highlighted that a report will be brought before you fairly soon to again make changes to the ASN transport in order to reduce that significant overspend that's taking place in that budget. So within education, we can see a figure of an overspend that will reduce, but we can see active work taking place, supported by relevant colleagues to work on and achieve the recovery plan. Within communities and economy, it's a break-even position, £25,000, neither here nor there. But the good news with this report is that you know that in Q1, that the recovery plan was approved by Cabinet, and work since September has taken place, and you can see the fruits of that work bringing back that budget back online. That would mask a whole series of challenges and works that the Deputy Chief Executive and his heads of service and budget holders have had to take since September to achieve that recovery plan. Pressures remain, and pressures and new and emerging pressures will continue as we go forward. But again, really pleased with the actions being taken and the collaborative approach that's been taken within communities and economy. I suppose at paragraph 20, members, a slightly different tone around health and social care. Not a negative tone, but a tone that recognises the substantial and ongoing challenges being impacted upon that budget through demand and demand management. 2 recovery plans in play, approved by the IGIB. A recovery plan that sees that injection of £4 million that you approved 2 weeks ago. But with that, we can see that instead of that being a £500,000 overspend at year end likely to happen, we can see that's £1.2 million, because in the last few weeks we've seen a change position, particularly around out with placements, and that has had an impact on the budget. So despite the really good work that's taken place in striving towards achieving those two recovery plans, that demand management is needing to be taken further. In paragraph 22 touches on the work that Craig and his team are doing, but we also, as Cabinet, recognise the work that you've undertaken in terms of providing innovation funding for 4 projects that will, over time, also produce some respite for that budget. Paragraph 24 picks up on capital works around Rose Riley Sports Centre. It's asking approval to provide additional funding for works that were identified as the programme took place. And in terms of the other matters, Chair, they're covered more detail in the covering report, but I'm happy to stop there and take any questions that members may have.
Thanks, Joe. Maybe a couple of quick questions for me. First of all, just when you mentioned Rose Riley, I'd heard there's a wee bit of storm damage up there and elsewhere, but I'm just the general point about storm damage, just wonder where we are with Belwyn or anything like that, and just what the kind of, I know it's a kind of early days to assess, the full impact, but just be helpful to know where we are.
I'm very conscious that Andrew is here and can probably answer more detailed questions around the damage that's been done. But in terms of Belwyn, on Monday I contacted colleagues in Scottish Government to say that the Council is currently quantifying the damage and the costs that are likely to be incurred, and that we put Government on notice that we may be applying to Government for a request to activate Belwyn. Now, the Belwyn scheme is a scheme where we can seek recompense for costs due to, for example, storm damages, but we have to incur 0.2% of our revenue budget before we can make a claim. So we have to incur costs of £660,000, after which we can put those additional costs on a claim to Government. There's some fairly stringent rules around Belwyn, which I'm happy to share at a later date, but I'll maybe hand across to Andrew, if that's okay with you, Chair, to go through more detail about damage to properties.
Thanks, Joe. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. I think obviously there's been significant damage and impact of the storm last week, and continue to kind of manage the recovery of that. There's a number of buildings. Obviously, we did have a couple of schools closed on Monday due to the power shortages rather than necessarily the damage to the buildings. But there is a number of buildings that we are obviously have started to repair and obviously are continuing to work on. I think one aspect, just in addition to Belwyn, is obviously a number of the repairs will be covered by insurance as well. So that balance of between things we can claim on insurance and things we can maybe put through in terms of Belwyn. But obviously we're continuing to work on that, and obviously happy to provide separately a bit more detail on individual locations if members want to contact me around that. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Drew.
Thanks, Chair. Just page 12, the Education Recovery Plan, withdrawal of central funding for primary school swimming lessons. This is really disappointing for me. I understand the decisions, there's hard decisions to be made, and they're not made lightly, but the decision contradicts all the great work we've been doing with the Health and Safety Department at Lochdoon with the water safety training, basically. Again, 250 kids last year attended. It's just a life skill that they really need, that they can take home with their families as they go along. I would ask the officers, it's £23,000, ask officers if they could find this money elsewhere. It's 23,000, it's not a huge amount of money. I don't know whether that be possible or no.
Linda.
Councillor Filson, just by way of reassurance, this was money that's already been extracted and clearly would continue to be extracted. However, we've been really keen to mitigate against any of that impact that you've already suggested, and clearly in the Doon area that has special significance in terms of young people being able to swim. So there's absolutely no effect on the Doon Academy, O'Mellington Bells Bank piece, and where schools have previously benefited from central funding, actually where they've been able to step in is to look at their PEF, but also parent councils raising money for aspects like that as well. So we're not quite concerned about, you know, how it looks on the front of the actual report, but actually the impact of this from having done an initial run round the schools, most of them were actually doing that of their own volition anyway to do that. Obviously a lot of the schools, particularly Doon, is sited next to the leisure centre, so there's not been an issue there. Where there's actually been more of an issue has been travel around about that piece, and schools have been really innovative around about using public transport, etc. So having looked at that in terms of impact, we're not really concerned as to schools that won't partake of it anymore. They're just going to use alternative funding streams in terms of that particular piece, because some schools were already in that space of having to put other funding in, so they were often having to top that up anyway. What we had centrally didn't cover it in any sense in terms of what it would cost if we paid for all of it. So we're quite happy that the schools all have alternative plans, but were that not to be the case, again, Councillor Filson, picking up your point, if clearly Cabinet are minded to give that a second look, then we can give that a second look. But from our perspective, we did do an initial check that wouldn't have any detrimental impact on any young people, particularly in that Doon area where there's the additional water safety aspect. But clearly, I'll pass back to Joe and other officers around about your ask there, Councillor Filson.
I'll just go back in there, Chair. My focus really was in the full authority basically, rather than just in the Doon Valley side, because I know things are in place there. Thanks.
So I'm happy to take that forward, but I would just highlight that the £23,000 is the remnants of a budget that's been deleted over time. So there's been very little ask on that budget, as Linda pointed out. Schools managing their own programmes as such. So with the lack of use of this budget against the backdrop of the £2.25 million overspend, then it's right that is offered up as a consideration for members, and that's what was in the
Thanks for clearing that up, Joe. Thanks very much.
Ian, sorry, I couldn't see who that was. Ian.
Thanks, Dougie. Just picking up on Joe's point about the out with placements. I can remember back to my time working closely with Graham Shaw. This is something that the council don't really have a great deal of control over. It basically comes from the children's panel. They assess the individual children's needs and apply appropriate measures. So I appreciate what Joe's saying, but it's one of these things. Some years you have very low spend, and other years you have quite considerable spend. So I think we've just been a wee bit unlucky in this one.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I mean, I think we need to, you know, it's quite a considerable shift in terms of the changes, and we need to keep a close eye and just to see, you know, what the kind of circumstances are around about it. Just to, you know, I can remember back quite a few years ago when we got quite a bit of financial difficulty because of the pressures this budget was having overall. It just needs one or two young people to get expensive care packages just to put the budget really out of line. Eddie?
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Linton. I mean, this is one of the areas that in terms of the overall review of children's services that we've been wanting to look at. We've been doing a bit of work to look at where all the money is spent in terms of children's services within the council and make sure it's spent in the most appropriate way. So, you know, it's a sense of frustration at times about how sometimes we've structured ourselves. We actually see things as a education budget or a social work budget or a vibrant budget. This is about money for all our children, and that's what the review was about how we turn some of that around. So it's about making sure when we look at this, we look at it in the round, and that's what we're trying to do as part of that review that we came forward.
Okay, and keep a close eye on things and mitigate where we can. Okay, Joe?
Thanks, Chair. We now move on to page 12. And I don't intend going through this in great detail, members. The majority of information on these pages through to page 18 are information about the budget position at Q3, but importantly, they also contain the recovery plans that you approved 2 weeks ago. So in education, you can see the 2.289 and the work that's being done. And maybe just some points I can pick out for you, just in addition to the service pressures, is in noting the work that's taken place across the council to recover the budget, which is really, really welcome from from where I am, and you can see the 2 recovery plans for wellbeing on page 16. But page 16 also highlights 1 or 2 other things for us. At the bottom of page 16, on that table around central services and on housing benefit and council tax subsidy, you can see that we are overspent by £900,000. This relates to applications for council tax benefit or council tax relief. We get a sum of funding to provide that money. Is about £9 million. We're currently spending £10 million, and there's no sign of that reducing. And as you would expect, councils are lobbying government to say through COSLA to highlight that pressure that's taking place. But it's maybe a flavour, an indication of just what's happening, not just in the council, but what's happening in households across East Ayrshire. Across the just a few up from that, you can see insurance. I had a wry smile when Andrew mentioned that there was a potential for insurance claims to go in. Currently £351,000 overspent in insurance in terms of our premium. So you know how insurance works. You claim today and you pay tomorrow. So I expect that budget will need some look at as well. We're doing a great deal of work on our insurance premium and our insurance policy, and I can tell you more about that at a subsequent meeting. But over the page, page 17, about halfway down in the funded by part, you can see that our council tax yield, in other words, our collection, is up £600,000. Now, that's a great news story if it were totally true. But quite a lot of that £600,000 is the additional 10% added on as a surcharge because of non-payment. So just a concern that we're monitoring. And we'll bring back some further detail, maybe in political groups, as we go through the months ahead. Housing revenue account, £200,000 underspent, but that again masks unders and overs in terms of the pressures within that budget and the work that colleagues have to do to take that forward. So that's the revenue part. Services working together corporately and looking at all finances available to try and recover budgets. And important that I say when I talk about recovering budgets, this year has almost been a learning year. It's been a year when we've had to almost reset things because we now recognise that demand will just not stop. So it's about managing that demand. Moving on to page 20 in those initiatives that you set as a council in February, and these counter some of that housing benefit, council tax benefit pressures that our households are feeling. So in that, we can see that in terms of half-price school meals, in that £900,000 you set aside to provide half-price school meals from P6 through to S6. Indications are that has led to 65,000 meals, additional meals, being created, being made, and being used within schools. So that initiative is working and working really well. And the clothing grants for 3 and 4-year-olds that Ruth beside me leads on in terms of that electronic application. You can see that has been another success. Just under 300 children have received that award of £50. And those applications, well, again, they were open in August. They were open again after Christmas, and we'll open the process again after Easter. So a better picture of that probably in June. And you can see as well in terms of the financial inclusion that just under £1 million of financial gains, nearly 200 referrals have been made as well. And that's an indication of just some of the positive work that can be achieved through the initiatives that you set as part of the budget. So, Chair, happy to stop there and take any questions any members may have.
Thanks, Joe. I think just in terms of some of the work we've been able to do, some of the additional initiative work, great to see nearly £1 million has been levered by the financial inclusion team. That's to some of our poorest communities, and also rolling out the half-price school meals has been incredible. And that's as we try and do something about issues that we have in terms of child poverty. That's a great thing to see, and good to see the progress of the Civic Pride and corporate enforcement team as well. Albeit we're still trying to wrestle with the issues in terms of staff, trying to attract additional staff. Can I just ask a wee question, Joe, just in terms of, I should remember the bequeath at Cray Park, what is that? in page 17.
So this will, Chair, this will relate to partnerships and projects, which is where we hold developer contributions and, more importantly, money that came in through the Opencast call. Let me, Chair, find more information about that, and I'll come back to Cabinet.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know we did the work to the pond with the filtration scheme and the pathways and right. So I know the kind of some additional working there. I'm just quite curious because it's always good to see a bit of investment into our parks. Okay, but back to the initiatives. But I think this is something I think we need to see where we've made progress, and obviously, come budget setting, we'll need to have a look at some of these again just to see where there's been progress. And I think we need to just because there has been, some of these initiatives have paid out incredible dividends for the community. Colleagues, any other comments or questions? Okay, right, carry on, Joe.
So, members, we go to page 22 in Pupil Equity Fund. You know that this is a fund provided by Scottish Government to directly to our schools based on uptake of free school meals. You can see that we've got just over £4 million of Pupil Equity Fund for the year, and spend to date is £2.3 million and £1.4 million to be spent by the end of March, with a carry forward through to June, the way that this works. You'll see as well in the Education Recovery Plan on page 12, work around changing or trying to get schools to align their PEF spend to financial years rather than academic years. That work's been taken forward, but as we stand today, this is a snapshot of PEF at Q3, and it shows the work's been done across schools to spend that money, and it also shows the significant sums that are passed forward to our schools. If I can just continue, Chair, on to alternative delivery models at page 25. This is where we set out the budgetary control for Ayrshire Roads Alliance and also for the Leisure Trust. And at the top of page 25, we set out the table showing the financial position for the three elements of ARA. And within that strategic delivery, a small underspend of about £250,000. It's been there all year. It's to do with vacancies and recruiting of staff and additional savings identified within that central core. In the east part of the ARA, we can see an overspend of around £443,000. It shows, firstly, a shortfall in income because of road maintenance. But a few lines down, you can see that that offset by vacancies, particularly within roads maintenance. So less roads maintenance costs in terms of expenditure going out, and because there's less work going out, then the income from that works is impacting too. So there's additional issues in terms of parking income. You can see that's and with electricity and EV charging that you can also see in the south element too. But an overspend of £1.2 million, 443 for east. And in the capital section in the table below, you can see the challenges that the head of ARA faces, particularly at the top of page 26, with some road slips, and you've been kind enough in the past few months to provide an allocation from the council's renewals and repairs fund to support the head of ARA to take remedial action against some of those road slips where the road is physically slipping off its foundation, but more taking place, unexpected road slips taking place. And probably, members, as we go through the year end, it might be the case that I'll be coming back to ask for a subsequent draw, given the urgency of the work and the importance of the infrastructure and connectivity that takes place. And we can see other challenges taking place and other information taking place around the roads capital. In terms of the refurbishment of the car parks, we can note that the multi-storey car park, that demolition expecting to be completed by April this year, which is good news. Resurfacing 97% of the carriageway and 100% of the footway programme is complete. But we can also highlight some challenges and pressures around the works to our infrastructure and to bridges, which will be highlighted later on in the briefing section of this report. And within Ayrshire Leisure Trust, a break-even position and a budget that has got some fairly pressures up and down the way across the budget, but a net break-even position, which is really helpful in terms of the Leisure Trust, the works going forward, and also the plan that they have in terms of their trading arm. And with your approval, I'll just conclude by the Treasury section. And there's some shifting taking place in our Treasury position, members. We have repaid some loans and taken out some further loans, but I suppose the point I want to make to you here is that we've got deposits of around £9 million at the date of this report. At Q2, that was £67 million. So we've repaid some loans, but we're also very aware of our cash flow. And it says at the bottom of that page that we will expect to take some borrowing, not to pay for capital programmes, but to help with our working capital. But sadly, the rate that we'll likely take is 5.25%. So rates are high, and so we're managing the Treasury position fairly carefully. You'll hear a lot more about this at next month council, when the Treasury management strategy for 2025-26 will be brought before you. So a lot on the revenue side of the House, Chair, but being managed, and that initial position of the overspend at Q1 being remedied, but some other challenges and also some opportunities that have come to light in the last few months. Happy to stop there, Chair.
Thanks, Joe. Just in terms of our mentioning page 28 about the marketing required to promote alternative programme following the closure of Grand Hall and Palace, and to some degree understand that the pantomime and other events have been quite successful and managed to recoup some of the losses that we'd had. I think there's been some unjust criticism in terms of the big top, in terms of our exposure there, pardon the pun. And I think most of that will be recouped, and the events have been cancelled or are going to be rescheduled. But just to have that kind of assurance, and I know that from discussion with members of the Leisure Trust that the timescale to disassemble the big top was 4 days, I understand, though many of the items of value were taken out. So I think we've got some undue criticism there, and I think we've got marks in hand, but just looking for that assurance, Joe.
So as I understand it, the Annika and her team were in constant dialogue with the owners of the big top before Friday, and giving an option to come in and take remedial action. But at the same time, we also, as you rightly say, removed items for that were in the big top in advance of the storm coming in. Leisure Trust are in negotiation with the owner and looking at the conditions of contract, and I think are fairly relaxed about the position in terms of the issues and damage to the big top. And Annika is also keen to find another location, recognising that this has been financially beneficial, both in terms of the pantomime and also in terms of the other acts and music acts that were to follow. Some have already taken place, but others were to take place, and trying to source another location to make that happen. And in true style of the Leisure Trust and Annika and her team, they're thinking out the box on this, and I'm hoping that they'll come back fairly soon with a resolution to how they can reschedule and also the remaining acts and events that are due to take place actually take place, so they can recoup the cost and also produce income back to the trust.
So thanks very much. You know, and we should be reassured because it is income also to the local business community. You know, that would have been lost and would have affected some of our businesses, because we know that the pantomime brings an awful lot of people into Kilmarnock and the wider area, as does some of these events. And I think it's shown that we are able to hold such events and attract people to the town, and that's really important for some of our pubs and cafes and other areas. And I think recognition positively of that, rather than some of the comments that we've seen negatively, which I really think are unwarranted. Claire.
I'd just like to thank the Chair for highlighting that, and that as well, Joe. I think we have done fair criticism. Just a quick question on car parks, if I could just go back to that. It was the Grange car park. It looks like it's just about completed work, and I was just looking for an anticipated date. Thank you.
So I don't have that to hand, but I'll get that to you after the meeting.
I noted all the demolition has been done, so it's just a matter of a wee bit of tarmac and some white paint, and hopefully, because I know there's a bit of congestion there with the popularity above adventure and other things, so we need to, sooner we get that, the better. Drew.
Thanks, Chair. Joe just mentioned their slips, getting the magic word again, that I know everybody keeps hearing about this one here at Cole Glen, at Cloughfinnet, at Dolmellington, just outside my front door. This is 9 years it's been going, basically. This is into the 9th year. But we're making good head with that. But unfortunately, we've got another one in the A713 at Polnesson, which will take preference to the B741. I have been in contact with Jane, and Jane's been keeping us up to date. I think we've got the models there now, and we're closely ready to put out to tender. So hopefully that will be done. But there's a potential for another one in the A713 nearer Ayr. So we do have our challenges there, and ARA has their challenges. But to get that extra funding, Joe, to get these done as quick as we can, basically. Thanks.
I agree 100% there, Andrew. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Graham, then Jim, sorry.
It's a question on about the bus station. I was driving past today and I noticed that the missing cladding is now in place. So just to ask Jane if that is now all the work's complete. And obviously did a walkabout a few weeks ago with the leader and Councillor Boyd, and I think can't remember who else was with us, but we noticed some broken tiles just to see if they've been fixed, and then when the deep clean is going to take place. And also a question on the multi-storey car park. Obviously, it's a big part of the town centre. We can see visually, and I imagine there's a lot of work going on internally, but visually it's still there. It's just to see when we anticipate some of the larger structure to come down, and just some reassurance that we're still on target for that April date.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there was an issue with the bins as well. It seems to be continuing. I think, just there's a bit of fly tipping around about the recycling bin in all places, but if we any kind of report on that. Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Barton. Yeah, the main part of the works at the bus station is now complete. I'll come back to you with the dates for the broken tiles and the deep clean. The multi-storey car park is progressing and is still anticipated to complete on time. I'm not sure if Andrew, if you get any update, or Simon, regarding actual when the building will start to actually be seen to be coming down.
Thanks, through you, Chair. I don't have that programme detail, but I can certainly provide it to members. I know that there's been extensive internal stripping out works, which is normal with demolition contracts, where there's a lot of, it seems to be slow because there's a lot being taken out inside before the actual main visible works commence. But I can get a hold of these dates and circulate that.
That'd be helpful. That a wee bit of progress report would be helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Oh, sorry, Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Jane, a question from you about the potential for a 2-week closure of the A70. It's a major road into the authority of the 74, and there is a low HGV, PCV on that. Would it be essential for that 2 weeks, or can look at alternatives for that? And because I'm taking into consideration where these traffic movements would be diverted to, and they are narrow roads, and taking cognizance of that and the fact that with the wind farm traffic that we have on the B713, the new conduct to the Mellet and the incidents that's been on there, I have concerns about that.
Yeah, it's a fairly narrow section that we will be doing the work on. It's to repair a retaining wall. So it is likely it's going to require a closure. The 2 weeks window would normally be that would be the worst case scenario. I'll speak to our team and see if we can cut that down, but I think usually you allow a bit of leeway either side in case of unforeseen circumstances. So hopefully the actual time would be much less than that, but we would have to allow a little bit extra just for unforeseens.
Just a follow up, Jane. I mean, I know some of the roads when the work's getting done will need to close, but would it be even the possibility of opening outside the working hour times where it could be open at night and such like?
Yeah, we'll investigate all that and see what the potential is for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Okay, anyone else? Capital Program, Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. As usual, I won't go through the main report in great detail, but if I could highlight some key points just for a selection of projects. Starting with completed projects, the final 2 phases of homes at the SHIP programme development at Kennedy Drive in Kilmarnock were handed over earlier this month. And there's approximately £25 million of construction contracts currently on site, which include the Kilmarnock bus station and multi-storey car park projects that we've just spoken about, and also St Sophia's Primary School Enerfit refurbishment and Galston Library projects, which are both progressing well. However, with both projects, there's unfortunately been the need to undertake some additional unforeseen remedial works. It's now anticipated that both projects will be completed in June. Projects at a detailed design stage include Palace Theatre as part of Cultural Kilmarnock, which obtained planning and listed building consent in December. Tenders have been received for phase 1 works and are being assessed, and it's anticipated that works could commence on site in March. At Kilmore's Primary School, technical designs are being completed to replace the existing dining hall and kitchen, with works planned to start in the summer. And at Stuart Academy, design proposals for the new extension aligned with revised school role projections have now been completed, and it's expected that tenders will be issued over the summer period. Projects at the earlier stage of development include the Ayrshire Engineering Park and Ayrshire Manufacturing Investment Corridor, where outline planning consent was granted in December. The tendering process for phase 1 infrastructure works has commenced, and an anticipated starting site is again this summer for those projects. With the Doon Valley Community Campus, following completion and assessment of a range of surveys, Ariba Stage 1 reports now been prepared and a preferred options identified, which is currently being reviewed in conjunction with our education colleagues. Further detail will be provided for members' consideration as part of the annual Capital Programme Update report, which is going to Cabinet in February. Thanks, Chair. Just a brief update on some projects, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Simon. Any questions? Drew?
Just a wee update. I think I've had an update from the headmaster at the school, but I would just like a wee update from Simon himself and his team for about the damage that was caused to Storm Edwin there with the Games Hall gable end and the roof.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Chair. There had been identified an area of high-level brickwork as part of the surveys that we'd undertaken that was causing a slight concern, and that had been harassed, fenced off, pending works being undertaken to address that. Obviously, with the severity of the storm last Friday, that building, along with others, was impacted, and some of that brickwork came down. So we had engineers out on site assessing the remedial works that need to be done to rectify that, and we'll be looking to take that forward as quickly as possible.
I just worry a wee bit, Simon, the size of that wall with the Harris fence and just more or less covering the pavement and the road still open. I would like to see that barrier maybe extend it a wee bit, so as if the wall had to come down, and unfortunately people would be certainly out the road of it then. Yeah,
thanks. Through you, Chair. That safety measure, that exclusion zone, was undertaken over the weekend to ensure that there was a safe area around about that wall, pending the works being undertaken.
Right, thank you.
A couple of wee ones for me as well, Simon, as well. In terms of we're going back towards Ayrshire Athletics Arena again, and the erosion of that river's getting, quite noticeable now. Just obviously, summer 2026, there'll be a few storms and a bit of rainfall to fall down between now and then, and just looking for some reassurances if there's any, immediate mitigation that we can take. Can we do that? Because the risks are quite significant if we don't. So.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Conscious of the kind of the issue around that, we have been working closely with the consultants that are engaged to take this project forward. There's monitoring in place around the AAA and the riverbank, which is checked on a regular basis. It's not showing anything that is causing immediate cause for concern. It's a challenging project in terms of the engineering solution that's going to be needed, and we're looking at the options to undertake that. And of course, there's a range of parties that we need to get approval from, including the Rivers Trust, SEPA, etc., which impacts on the window that we can undertake the works. So I can give you the reassurance that it's being monitored, and there's equipment on place on site to ensure that we have an accurate record of any movement that's taking place.
Thanks for that, Simon. And just finally, there's just in terms of, we mentioned Kennedy Drive. I don't know, like the rest of the members, I like to have a wee nosy at some of these, particularly when we're bringing in new technologies. Just wondering if there will be an opportunity to have a look at some of the new housing that's there. And I noticed there's been reasons for about down in Wallace Court and Mauchline as well. We've not had an opportunity to have a look around that, and I know members of the Cabinet would like that. If we can just maybe pass it on, that's something we do it normally, but just I think with one reason or another, it's kind of slipped by. But I think it'd be, if we want to hear, they're really good houses in terms of Kennedy Drive, and certainly worth a look at. If we can arrange something. Okay, Jim.
Just one from you, Simon. I noticed run about the tender for demolition of Auckland Academy. Is there any indication run about Green Mill Primary and the progress for that as well?
Yeah, as Green Mill sits within the conservation area, there's a number of reports we need to prepare to support that demolition application. So we have had reports from property consultants around about potential viability of future uses, and also conservation reports from a conservation architect around about the demolition of the building. So that they've been prepared. They've been submitted to planning as part of our pre-application process. And once we have feedback, we can then move forward with a formal application. So a bit unsure of likely timescales, but once we have that feedback from our planning colleagues and get the application lodged, they'll be able to update on when we think an anticipated starting site might be.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, anyone else? Okay, thanks, Simon, for that report. Joe, what are we, business briefings, isn't it, next bit? People. Donna.
Thanks, Chair. The people pages within the summary report start on page 36 with the absence statistics beginning on page 37. So for this period, there are 3,232 instances of absence, which is a decrease of 307 compared to the same period last year. However, there are more working days lost, 62,382 days lost, which is an increase of 4,055 compared to the same period last year. This has resulted in a rise of 0.83 working days lost per employee. There have been 2,518 days taken for special leave, and reasons for this include bereavement, time off for dependents, election duties, jury and witness duties, medical and treatment, trade union duties, volunteer days, unauthorised absence, unpaid special leave, and other paid special leave. The top 5 reasons for absence for 2024-25 are detailed in the graph, and they are currently stress, personal in first place, musculoskeletal, operations recovery and stomach abdominal. And these have been the same for the 23-24 year. However, fifth place has changed from colds, flu in 2023-24 to stress work related this year. For short-term absence, the total work days lost is 54,272 days, or 9.52 working days lost per employee. And when we compare this to the same period last year, which was a total of 32,851 days lost, this is an increase of 21,421 and 5.69 working days lost per employee, which is an increase of 3.83. For long-term absence, the total work days lost is 8,109 days, with 1.42 work days lost per employee, compared to the same period last year, which was 25,547 days lost, or 4.43 work days lost per employee, a decrease of 3.01 days. On page 38, the occupational health activity details that there were 552 occupational health appointments. This is a decrease of 435 from the same period last year. 129 early interventions, a decrease of 154 from the same period last year, and 129 physiotherapy appointments took place, and this is an increase of 11 from the same period last year. As previously advised, members will note that the reduction in recorded appointments is due to the transition period for the new occupational health provider. However, all referrals are being processed and appointments taking place with the new provider, and physio referrals have also been continuing. So we're currently finalising the new online management system, and reporting information will be provided as part of that to confirm all of the relevant appointment details and that it's been managed appropriately. So the support and attendance and wellbeing team have implemented an early intervention pilot for stress absence, and this started on the 1st of January 2025. And details on the progress of this will be shared in due course, with further information going out to employees and managers to remind them of the process and compliance with the policies. Disciplinary activities detailed at the bottom of page 38, and there were 3 verbal warnings, 5 written warnings, 7 final warnings, and 2 people resigned during the investigation process, and 5 had no formal disciplinary action taken. 2 are still under consideration. For grievance activity, at the top of page 39, this details that 3 were concluded at stage 2, with 1 concluded at stage 4 and 3 ongoing cases. The 3 ongoing cases are 1 in the Chief Exec's service, 2 in Health and Social Care Partnership. There's also a whistleblowing investigation, and this was concluded and determined that no formal action was required. On page 39, members should note that headcount across the council since this time last year has decreased by 107 people, or 1.6%, and from the previous quarter has decreased by 95 people. It should also be noted that the number of other employees under 25 has reduced by 20, and overall the employees under 25 this year compared to last year has reduced by 21. Our young workforce currently equates to 5.92% of the total headcount as at the 31st of December 2024. On page 40, developing a young workforce, members may wish to note that while there has been a decrease in the total young people by 2 compared to the previous quarter, there were 22 new apprentices appointed, 2 leavers, 1 resigned and 1 who came to the end of the training contract, and 2 who gained jobs within the council. Also on page 40, members will see a breakdown of the Jobs and Training Fund, and as at the 31st of December, the council have 106 young people in post through Jobs and Training, an increase of 5, with recruitment linked to the Jobs and Training programme now finishing. There's a small number that we hope to have appointed in this last quarter of the programme. As previously advised, a request has been shared with the council management team for proposals for funding for phase 2 of the Jobs and Training Fund, and this will be considered shortly, and future modern apprenticeship proposals will be put forward. So the recruitment update is detailed at the bottom of page 40. And although there was an increase this quarter from the previous, it's worth noting that in Q1, April to June 24, there had been a decrease of 180 posts advertised. This was linked to the ongoing recruitment freeze, which came into effect from them. So although vacancies advertised most recently is starting to rise, it is worth highlighting that the increase is in frontline posts, with a good number of these being early years posts which had previously been frozen. The decrease within Chief Exec's office this quarter is due to the spike in teachers and early year posts being filled for August start dates, resulting in a reduction in this area during this quarter. On page 41, details are provided on the number of employees leaving the council in the period. This was a total of 135, a decrease of 70 from last quarter, broken down as follows. So there were 37 people who retired, 80 who resigned, and 18 people who left for other reasons. In terms of the other reasons, there were 12 due to the end of a temporary contract, 1 death in service, 2 ill health retirements, 1 dismissal for misconduct, and 2 dismissals for unsatisfactory work. It should also be noted that over the cumulative periods 1 to 9, there have been 19 employees who have left the council service on the grounds of ill health retirement and 13 on the grounds of capability due to ill health. In terms of payroll activity, detailed on page 41, the number of terminations has decreased by 432 compared to the same period last year. And members should note that pays processed in the period was 70,776. The number of cars leased is currently 567 compared to 295 at the same period last year, which is an increase of 272 cars, and there are 29 vehicles awaiting delivery. In terms of communications overview, this is detailed on page 42 and highlights the inquiries, activity and campaigns, noting the team supported a range of activities and events during the period with a slight downturn in activity across media and social platforms, which is expected at this time of year due to the Christmas and New Year holiday period. Work continues with excellent progress for our website's accessibility, currently focusing on reviewing the content on the East Ayrshire Council website. In relation to organisational development key performance areas, these are detailed on pages 42 and 43 and provides members with more detail on the online induction module, leadership programmes, the mentoring framework and FaceTime engagement. Noting that 100% of new starts have completed their welcome induction module within the first 6 months. Members will also note that the number of FaceTime engagement is currently at 45%, and it should be noted that as these are carried out across the council at different times of the year, it will never be 100%. The People and Culture Organisational Development Manager has meetings scheduled with the council management team where it's routinely discussed to improve and agree appropriate actions across services to ensure maximum completion within the required timescales and to highlight any areas of concern. And that's me finished, so happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Any questions? Jim?
Thanks, Donna. I suppose for me, the one that jumps out to me is the percentage increase in workplace-related stress absence. It concerns me. I still say the two of them intrinsically linked, where you have the stress at home and workplace, but that really does concern me, and maybe I play that to the increase in what's causing that. And I suppose that Ian picking up on is the kind of hot topics. If I could pick up on that on page 42, and it's Cumnock bus station and the vandalism round about that. There was an on-site visit there last week, and it was absolutely disgusting to witness the amount of vandalism there. The cost of the taxpayer in excess of £200,000. It can't go and it can't continue without some sort of circumstances for the perpetrators around that. The police have their frustrations around about that, as do the elected members and the wider public, but that just can't go. And so I was picking up on that, but I suppose for me the question is really around about work-related stress.
Thanks. In relation to the work-related stress, yeah, it has increased this last quarter. Obviously, the work of our new team that's been set up, and they're doing a lot of wellbeing work within different services. So it's hoped that once we start to see that work making a difference, it will have an impact on the stress-related absence, hopefully, going forward, but certainly that's the concentrated area that they are working on at the moment.
Thanks. No, you're absolutely right to point out, Jim, in terms of I mean, it's not just the 200,000 damage to the bus station, it's the reputational damage for the town and, you know, just how that makes people feel about their town. So it's absolutely right we get on top of it. Jim.
If I could just come back in there, I take great pride in that when the bus station was completed. What a welcoming it was when you visited coming on the bus. But if you had witnessed it just now, and I might encourage some of my colleagues to go and have a look at it. It is absolutely disgusting. So hopefully after the back of the on-site meeting with colleagues and partners that there is a resolution to this and we can find a way forward where it never happens again to the extent it has.
Oh, absolutely. Claire.
Hi, thanks. It's on page 42. It's the communications team. It's not maybe an answer for just now, but just a couple of questions. I don't understand what the average press coverage percentage is in relation to, I know. And the other one was we're still only using the 2 platforms here, and we're going to be using any other platforms, and we may be going to be leaving another platform. So it might not be for just now, but certainly something to get an answer to for all of us.
Yep, that's fine. I can find out about that.
Thanks.
Elon Musk, beware. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a wee question on
sorry,
just on the web page, just when you were saying that you're looking to update it. That is a question I've kind of raised previously in regard to well-being, suicide prevention and bereavement support. It would be really good to have that on the landing page, so direct links for those 3 things. I recently tried to find information on the bereavement support and found it quite difficult to access. So if others are in the same boat, they're looking for that support, it'd be really useful to have that really easy to hand.
Yep, the wellbeing team are actually looking at revamping the wellbeing pages, and that will be part of that. So I'll certainly pass on to make sure that that part is front and centre in relation to that.
That's great, thank you.
Claire.
Just to come back in and what Neil was saying there, we're having the number of web visitors, but there's no bounce rate. It doesn't tell us how long they stay and if they get the information they want. So it's just something else to add on to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The Health and Safety Performance Report covers periods 7 to 9. If I could begin by drawing members' attention to the top of page 45 of the summary report. It's noted that there were 667 non-reportable incidents reported to the Health and Safety team. This is a reduction of 44 incidents in comparison to the same periods last year, while incidents reported to the Health and Safety Executive increased slightly by 4. Over this reporting period, the decrease in non-reportable incidents, which can be seen at the bottom of page 46, is mainly due to the decrease in the number of incidents of violence and aggression in educational establishments, which have gone down by 80 incidents from the same periods last year. While the number of incidents of violence and aggression reported by non-educational establishments has still remained static. The number of days to the number of days to report an incident to the health and safety team increased slightly from 3.3 days to 4.5 days, but remains well within the 5-day target for reporting. As set out in page 7 of the summary report, in order to ensure safety compliance across all councils' higher risk activities, we had a total of 878 recorded unannounced inspections carried out over the reporting period of 7 to 9. The outcome of these inspections and details of the action taken to address any safety deficiencies identified are reported to the appropriate senior management teams on a monthly basis. That concludes the Health and Safety Report, Chair and members, and I would be happy to take any questions.
So, Michelle, anyone, any questions or comments? Neil?
It's good to hear that there has been a reduction in violence and aggression and reported in schools, but how confident are we that it's an accurate reflection and whether or not they are being reported, given the fact that in other areas it has stayed at the same level?
Linda, would you?
Through you, Chair, and a very good question. Thanks, Councillor Ingram. I think there's two things here. So, number one, our staff are asked always to put any incidents through the SHE report system. So we've got no evidence to suggest that aspects are not being recorded, but what we do have in a much more positive vein is what we think is impact coming through around work on inclusion in respect of dysregulation trackers, etc. So much so that I believe we were approached by Channel 4 just recently to give some form of update as to what it is we're doing. So I think what we're actually seeing is a real piece of work in terms of relationship policy playing out, behaviour policy playing out, and clearly a lot around about the dysregulation tracker. We were able to look at specific incidents and specific young people and some of the triggers and sometimes the frequency and what days they actually happen on and get in front of these matters. So I think what you're actually seeing is a positive picture in that regard. I'd be very surprised if any staff had moved into a space where they weren't recording these issues. It's something our staff are used to doing, and it's something that I encourage them to do to ensure that we have an accurate picture at all times. But I think actually what we're seeing here is an actual perfect storm of some really key strategic work coming together around about support and inclusion in the schools at this point in time.
Well, if that's the case, Linda, I warmly welcome that and congratulate the teachers for their work.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone else? Okay, thanks. And Michelle, no, you did some personal issues here with your family. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you. And thanks for coming in this morning. Thank you. Joe?
Members, we're on page 48, business briefings. A selection of briefings that have been applied by chief officers for your review and scrutiny. They cover a range of services, and I suppose just to pick up some business benefits processing on page 48. I suppose that is showing a good result, but what it's also showing in that paragraph is that managed migration is taking place. We're going to hold a session with you members to give you more information on what managed migration is. Essentially, it will mean that the council will only pay housing benefit to pensioners. Anyone younger than a pensioner will get that their housing benefit through their universal credit. So it's quite a seismic change in my service, and Ruth and I and Colin are discussing the implications for that as we go forward. Page 49 highlights the achievement of curriculum for excellence levels for 2023-24. I remember this report last year. It was extremely positive, and this report continues that theme. It shows increases in attainment levels across primary and secondary, and shows incredible work again by our schools and by our teachers. In page 50, we have a range of indicators for communities and economy, and I suppose just to draw your attention to the capital surfacing programme and also to the general bridge inspections. Shown as red, the resurfacing programme, 97% against 100%, so not that much of a shift. But in terms of the general bridge inspections, it notes later on in the report that clerk of works has been appointed in November, and so we'll see a shift in that indicator as we go through later periods. And on wellbeing, we can see that despite the unprecedented demand pressures being experienced by the service, that it still holds that hospital discharge within 2 weeks, and it sets out a range of further information for your perusal. If I can, Chair, just move on to complaints. It begins on page 55. It shows there were 29 complaints with 7 carried forward. It shows the range of complaints and, more importantly, shows the improvement actions that services, including my own, have taken to deal with those complaints, and those complaints dealt with at stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3 on page 56 shows that in terms of responding to the complaint, been a bit of a deterioration in performance there, and so that will be taken forward through CMT to bring that back up to spec. Finally, Chair, the risks are noted at page 58. They note that there were no new risks added and no risk had their rating changed. It covers a number of areas, including financing to the council, the impact on our businesses and on our residents. It shows matters around income to be generated by the council, and the next report on today's agenda takes that bit a stage further, and it deals with a whole range of other issues. But as I said, no new risks added or no categories changed. And following members' questions, I would conclude by saying that the report to today's East Ayrshire Performs and the recommendations are at paragraph 3 on page 3, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I know in terms of the business briefing, we can skip by that, but it's worthwhile noticing great improvement in terms of curriculum for excellence, in terms of numeracy writing and right across the board, and also in terms of housing, in terms of relets and void rent loss, and bringing the arrears down significantly. Just with all the challenges that are faced in that area, that's quite remarkable achievements. And just maybe to note that, Jim.
Just one for me to go. It's for yourself, Jane, and it's on the number of general bridge inspections carried out. We're just over 50% there. Is there no particular reason why that's fell back as much?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McMahon. That was due to one of her staff members, or one of her clerk of works, was off long-term sickness, and then we've had trouble recruiting into that post, but we've now got that recruited and we're playing catch-up, so that should catch up with the year-end.
Maybe just take the opportunity while we're on that, the Whole House Road bridge, which is closed just now, which was subject to an accident. Will be any information of when that will be opening? Has there been any significant damage done to the bridge, and will we be taking precautions to make sure that there's no repeat of that event from our side? Jane.
I don't have an update for you, but I'll get one for you. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, includes the report in terms of the East Ayrshire Performance. The recommendations are on page 3. Paragraph 3, can we agree with the recommendations? Okay, thanks everyone. And now go to the update on the review of the items. Thanks. It's the end of the E items, so let the education folk. See you again. See you soon. Okay, and we're now going to item 3, which is a review, update and review of debt recovery arrangements. Ruth.
Chair. So this report is an update on the review of debt recovery arrangements, and it follows on from the report on income management and upfront payments, which was presented to Cabinet on the 15th of January. So there's some background provided in paragraphs 4 to 10. It gives a summary of the remit of the joint working group that was established last year to review debt recovery arrangements, and in particular the commitment to develop a fair collection and debt recovery policy. So to support the review, the Cabinet agreed to extend the Sheriff Officer contract for 12 months to March 2025. Since then, the review has grown wider than anticipated, and so we have now split it into 3 main phases. Paragraphs 11 to 14 detail phase 1, which focuses on reducing sundry debts and a migration to upfront payments. And it makes sense to deliver this as the first phase of the project because it has a significant impact on the council's debt profile and their future debt recovery needs. So paragraphs 15 to 21 detail phase 2 of the project, which will involve a complete review of the accounts receivable system. This will help support continuous annualised services with direct debit installed, and allows us to move all of the other one-off sundry services to the upfront payment model. A focused debt recovery programme will release significant debt provisions back to services, and corporate billing will be reviewed to ensure that billing reflects service delivery and protects our cash flows. Paragraphs 22 to 26 details phase 3 of the project, and which widens to review the recovery arrangements for other debts, which include council tax, business rates and house rents. And this requires a collaborative approach, which will see income management being improved to improve our overall collection rates. System requirements will be reviewed at this point, and all available diligence tools will be considered, which will include the potential to create a single view of debts for all services. And the fair collection and debt recovery policy will be finalised in this phase and will outline the debt recovery arrangements in a clear, transparent and consistent way. So although this work is being delivered at pace, the overall review does require significant time and resources across a number of service areas. So in paragraphs 27 to 30 are provided reasons why an extension to the Sheriff Officer contract for a further 2 years is required. It would help support this phased approach. It will allow the phased review to be completed with the recommendations implemented and the actual improvements measured. Procurement have been consulted on this extension, and they're in support of that because it provides continuity to our business arrangements, and it will also ensure that any new contract and tender will align with the new policy. So I'm happy to stop there and take any questions.
Thanks, Ruth. We know that some of this work is for some folks a bit dry, but it's quite a lot of work that's went into this and the reviews, and a lot of time and effort. I'd just like to thank you and your team for that. Eddie?
Thanks, Leader. I mean, when Ruth brought this to, a corporate management team, she gave us all the numbers, and it was absolutely astounding the difference between billing some corporate partners as the year goes on compared to us waiting to the end of the year. If inflation's zero, it really doesn't matter too much, but now we're starting to see inflation grow. If we actually get bills of millions of pounds that are going through that, it actually matters significantly. So maybe it does sound dry, but when you actually see the numbers behind this, it's really significant, and actually preventing people getting into debt both protects the council and all the stresses that we were talking about earlier, on individuals as well. So it's really important work for us.
Absolutely. Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, can we just go straight to recommendations then? Agree to the recommendations. Okay, and next item is the community asset transfer, pitch and pavilion, King George V, playing field and Finnick.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The purpose of this report is to make a recommendation to Cabinet in terms of a lease of the pitch and pavilion at King George V, playing field and Fenwick through the Community Asset Transfer Framework to Fenwick Community Initiatives. The recommendations are outlined in paragraph 2, and I'll pick that up in the body of the report. Background is in sections 3 through 7. Members will note the pavilion has been indicated as surplus and vacant on the property management plan previously. The case for the asset transfer is indicated in section 8. This outlines the ambitious project which Fenwick Community Initiatives are undertaking. The application forms the first phase of the project and will enable drainage in the pitch, making it usable for community activities such as a gala day, and also support their ambitions to re-establish football activities within the village. The charity have sourced £165,000 of funding to complete this phase of the works. The recommendation therefore is to agree a 10-year lease for the site, subject to approval being obtained from Fields and Trust, given the designation of the site as a King George V playing field. Rent costs for the pitch and pavilion are £100 per annum. Implications for the paper are listed through sections 9 to 15, and happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Craig. Any comments or questions? The news story. Surprised Councillor Linton, who used to play for Finnick Thistles, now being heralded in this project. A few years ago, right enough.
Thanks, Dougie.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Okay, next and final items, Central JCC, I think that's just for noting. Can we agree to know it? Okay, and just maybe before we know last Friday we were all huddling in our houses, some of the staff, health and care staff and our road staff were out against did no insignificant risk to their own personal safety to make sure our communities kept going. And just maybe if we could pass a wee note, I'm sure for all of us, just to express our sincere thanks for the work that they do. It sometimes goes unheralded, and really appreciate it, Eddie, if you'd pass that to the staff. Okay, that concludes the business for today. Just thank you all for your attendance.
At the start, yeah.
I'm quite the sounding board. Can we start at half past? Is that run wait to 12 o'clock? Get to our suit earlier.
Okay.
Half past.
11:30.